The next speaker is Dr. Peyou Ndi. She's a biochemist from Cameroon. She's director of the Reece International Research Consortium and a lecturer at the Faculty of Medicine and Biomedical Science of the University of Yaoundé 1. She's developed an indigenous treatment of COVID-19 known as Ngul Betara. Dr. Marlyse Peyou Ndi, please, you have a microphone.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. We do.
All right. Okay, so I'll start by saying good morning to everyone. And it's an honor for me to be here with you. So I'll speak in English since you gave me the floor in English, but I can speak French too. So I received your question, and the question was asking me how was the situation of COVID-19.
I forgot.
Yes?
Yes, go ahead.
And go ahead? Okay.
Yeah.
Ask me how is the situation of COVID-19 in my immediate environment. So for me to talk about my immediate environment, it's very important that I talk about what is happening in the world. Now, I went across data as of the week of October 18, 2022. So WHO says in the world, the world has about a little bit less than 8 billion people. There has been about 622 million cases of COVID-19 in the world. Now, I went to Worldometer, another institution, very strong institution. They said there has been about 631 million cases of COVID-19. So you see, disparity is not proper to Africa. It's a world thing, it's not only Africa. Now, in the world, they said that we had about 6.5 million deaths. They both agree about that. Now, they say in Africa, for example, we had 12.7 million cases, and that's 2% of the world cases. Now, about death, Africa as a whole has about 258,000 deaths. We can hide cases, but in Africa, we cannot hide death, because when somebody dies in Africa, it is a feast. Funerals are organized as feasts to say goodbye to loved ones. So now let me zoom in Africa. Africa is 17.7% of the population, of the world population. That's about around 1.4 billion people. And in Africa, we had about 3.9% death of the overall global death due to COVID-19. I think Africa is quite resilient. And if I zoom in Africa as a WHO region, it's about 2.7% death. So this is quite a resilient continent, no matter what they will say. And now I heard an argument about us being young. I take Cameroon alone. In Cameroon, we have above 4 million people over 40, 50 years old. Why didn't these people die like flies? They're there. So that age thing, I don't think is a valid argument. They also said that in Africa, we're not very clean and all. In India, Calcutta, is that different? Why were people dying there more than in Africa? They were used to infectious diseases. So there's something strong about Africa. We should accept it ourselves. Now, I continue with data. I zoom in Central Africa. Central Africa is around 2.7% of the world population. And Central Africa, meaning the ECAS region, Angola, DR Congo, Cameroon, and Sao Tome and other countries. In Central Africa, we have about 216 million people, 2.7% of the world population. However, we had 0.12% of the global death. That's quite resilient. And now I'm zooming in more in Central Africa. Central Africa is 15.3% of African population. But we had 3.1% of the African death. You see, now I'm zooming in more in Cameroon where I live. we had above 121,000 cases and only 1,935 deaths. We are quite resilient, no matter what people will say. We can have high cases, we can't have death. And let me tell you something else. I read a WHO study that says over 2/3 of the African population have been infected with COVID-19. Let us accept that. What does that imply? That implies that Africa is even more resilient than we all thought. Now, I talked to you about the ECAS region. In the whole ECAS region, 217 million people and 8,000 deaths for 3 years, 11 countries, Central Africa, 8,000 deaths, a little bit over that. Is COVID-19 a priority in Central Africa or in Africa? I don't think so. Why? Let's talk about malaria. One country alone, Cameroon, 2020, there was a little less than 3 million cases of malaria, more than 4,000 deaths, confirmed death, estimated death 14,000. Do you know what that means? 14,000 deaths in only one country of Central Africa due to malaria. It's as if we had 3 crashes of a 777 Boeing, 3 plane crashes a month in only one country. So where is the priority? COVID-19 is a global issue. Let's accept that. It's not a priority for Africa. COVID-19 is not killing us as they're doing in Europe. Malaria is killing us. Maternal mortality. And let me tell you something else. I think it was in 2012, WHO data. 1 death out of 4 deaths in Cameroon was due to cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. So we die of cardiovascular diseases, we die of diabetes, infectious diseases, but not much of COVID-19 is not a priority. Now, there's something that's outraging in Africa. In Cameroon, for example, our country borrowed $400 million to fight COVID-19 from the IMF and from the African Development Bank. And 4 times less was spent to fight malaria. Can you imagine? And to fight malaria, I think it was above $100 million, and that money, only half came from Cameroon. The other half came from the Global Fund, USAID, and the UK. So Africa has a serious problem of making priorities. We don't need to copy everything. We don't need to go into meetings and meetings. Everything has to be contextualized. What is killing us? What are our priorities? What are we doing about research? We cannot copy everything. COVID-19 in Africa was more, at least I'm talking about sub-Saharan Africa. It was an economic issue. Why am I saying that? When there was confinement, borders were closed, and we don't manufacture much in Africa. We import almost everything, even what we can manufacture here. So when borders were closed, we lived as if we were in an embargo situation. So there was inflation. People didn't eat well because they couldn't import this and that. COVID-19 is an economic issue in Africa. What's killing us? Child mortality, maternal mortality, infectious diseases, cardiovascular diseases. Let's talk more about malaria. Let's push forward to fight malaria and to save our African population. Now, I'm going to the second question. You asked me why I'm developing a COVID-19 endogenous solution when everybody is advocating about vaccines. I like listening to Professor Raoul. I am a biochemist. I was trained in France. I was trained in the US by the best professors, and I do thank them. I studied being a molecular biologist. When you have a germ causing diseases. Some germs, when they have a higher mutation rate, they evade the immune system. They're not very immunogenic. And I said that, I was insulted and mocked. I knew coronaviruses know how to evade the immune system. So vaccination cannot be as efficient as for other germs. SARS-CoV-2 has a very high rate of mutation. That's why when somebody gets a vaccine, immunity will last 4 months. Only after 6 months, there's almost no immunity left. Then you have to over-vaccinate the person. And when you vaccinate the person over and over again, you decrease natural immunity. Now, let us look at data. In the week preceding October 18, 2022, we had above a little less than 8,000 deaths, and 79% of death due to COVID-19 happened in the most vaccinated continents. Like Europe, I think is about 64% fully vaccinated, people fully vaccinated. And America is over 70% people are fully vaccinated. And these two continents, they have 75% of COVID-19 death. That needs to ring a bell in our heads. And Africa, 22% of the population is vaccinated, but yet we have one of the lowest death rate due to COVID-19. That should also ring a bell. Africa is doing something that the world does not want to accept. Now, why do I went into developing an endogenous solution? What rang a bell in my head was back in 2014 when there was an Ebola outbreak in Guinea. I even traveled to Guinea afterwards. The epidemic started in December, I think, if I recall well. But for people to know what was killing people in Guinea, they had to wait until Centre Pasteur of Paris said in March that it's Ebola killing people. It's outraging. Guinean people couldn't detect what was killing them. So I started studying epidemics. I even wrote a book for advocacy, asking our governments to open P4 laboratories, enabling researchers to manufacture diagnostics stores, to manufacture vaccines. Afterwards, I started studying as a molecular biologist. I started studying the genomes of germs causing pandemics. I went back in 2002 when they had the first SARS-CoV-1 epidemics in Asia and the MERS-CoV epidemics. They did what they call molecular docking. I'll talk simply for everybody to understand me. It's a molecular biology techniques. What is happening? When you have a germ, it needs to be sequenced causing disease. It needs to be sequenced. When it's sequenced, you know the genome. And when you know the genome, you uncover protein, functional and non-functional proteins of that germ. And in doing so, you will know molecules that will block the engine of those proteins. And they call it molecular docking. I'm trying to speak very simply. That was done back in 2002 for coronaviruses in China, in Asia, and they made a list of molecules that could block coronaviruses. What we did in Cameroon, here in Africa, is to take that list and go to the forest, look for plants that contain the same molecules or close molecules with close properties. So we made that list and we didn't stop there. Now we started studying the pathophysiology of COVID-19. What is it doing of SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV-2, excuse me? What is it doing? When the virus enters the cell, it uses receptors. Everybody knows AC2, there are other ones, neuropilin, CD147, there are many. It enters the cells. What does it want to do? It wants to get multiplied. At that point, what can stop it? Antiviral molecules. What did we do? We went back to the forest We look for all those plants with strong antiviral properties that could block enzymes like polymerases and other functional proteins of SARS-CoV-2. We didn't stop there. We know that SARS-CoV-2 is a very diabolic virus. It will attack your hemoglobin. It will take the heme away, and that will create a lot of free radicals. So you need antioxidants. We went back to the forest looking for plants with strong antioxidant properties. At some point too, when SARS-CoV-2 will attack your hemoglobin, that hemoglobin will not be very functional anymore and will become a vascular disease. Now you need molecule that will block the progression of the vascular diseases. We've seen a lot of thrombosis. So we needed molecule that will block that. We went back to the forest to look for those plants, and we made lists. And now we see that coronaviruses, many for SARS-CoV-2, many organs in the body do have receptors. That's why that virus will go into organs and destroy our organs. And it's very important to have a medicine that will address many steps. COVID-19 is a multi-step disease. Why have we failed with Western medicine? Because usually Western medicine, they have one target. Now you need medicine with multiple targets, because with COVID-19, there's something killing us. SARS-CoV-2, when it gets to your body, it triggers what they call a hyper-inflammatory state. So you need a strong anti-inflammatories. And we have one that they call hyaluronic acid. That small molecule absorbs water. And then when you have it in your lungs, you have like gels, you have gels in your lungs. It's not very good to let people develop severe COVID-19, because now they have hemoglobin that cannot fix oxygen well anymore, and they have gels in their lungs. It doesn't matter how much oxygen will give them. At that point, most of them will die. And we knew if we have to let the African population go to the hospital at that stage, many people would die. So we needed plants that will block the hyper-inflammatory states. So we needed to think out of the box. We have big degrees that we got in the US, in France, but here we are in Africa. We have the wisdom of our ancestors. We have plants. Central Africa is the second lung of the universe after the Amazonian forest, because we have the rainforest. And in that forest, there are many riches, and we made many lists of plants in such a way that we can develop scientific mixture. And we didn't stop there. We see that what happened in China. Chinese people were able to treat, using Chinese traditional medicine, over 85% of infected people in China. They did that with SARS-CoV-1. They did that with SARS-CoV-2. And they made formulas from moderate to severe cases, and they made them public. They didn't hide them. They've been published. There's one scientist called Yang Yang. He published another one, Yang Zong. They published. What we did is to take the Chinese formula. We studied them. We see all the properties involved in those formula and all the lists that we had, and we made several formulas to address from prevention, moderate cases to severe cases. And we made a block of researchers, medical doctors, emergency physicians, pharmacists, biochemists, and even anthropologists to work with both traditional healers, the university, and private organization. And I take advantage, if you will allow me, to say thank you to Oregon Health Sciences University, who made a big donation for equipment, and the Cameroon National Insurance Fund helped us buy equipment. So we were able to make several formulas, and we tested for toxicology. We made toxicology tests. We know that they're not toxic. We made comparative studies using chloroquine, so we know that it works. So, and I don't know why people in Africa don't want to accept what is the strength of Africa. I saw many publications with a list of many plants able to address COVID-19 in several sub-Saharan Africa. So many arguments have been given, but every argument is weak. Now, there's something I would like to point out. I even read in a slide there, calling traditional medicine non-therapeutic interventions. I think it's a shame for Africa. And I saw that they have COVAX initiative. COVAX initiative is set for Africa to become a buyer, always a buyer. I didn't see anywhere saying that industry will be strengthened in Africa, or scientists will equip universities so that they can manufacture vaccines, so that they can manufacture medicines. In Africa, we have institutions set to import medicine and to control Africa, because that's really a shame. And there's I'm moving to your third question. You asked me what was the challenges I faced to have Ngulbutara approved and marketed in Cameroon? That's a very good question. I would like to tell you that there are several challenges. The first one is adversity. The second one is the research for adversity. Now, we face strong adversity, like for example, from the National Physician Council, when you have Africa looking down on the medicine, their own medicine. The plant is full of chemicals. And the Western medicine, sometimes you have a tablet. That tablet is also chemicals, it's full of chemicals. It's just that most of them are synthetic. In Cameroon, for example, they wanted our medicine to be called an adjuvant, complement, adjuvant. So we had big arguments. I was told that if they call Ngulbutara medicine, I will be killed. That's outraging. Killed for what? For trying to help Africans survive? Now, I ask, chloroquine, the national algorithm to treat COVID-19 in Cameroon with Western medicine is chloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. That algorithm was set back in China. And I know Professor Raoul also applied that, and it works very well. We did the same. We had 75% efficiency. Now, we have our trees full of quinolanes, and it's the mother tree from which chloroquine was inspired. Chloroquine is synthetic. How would they call chloroquine medicine? And the modern medicine, they call it adjuvant. We have a serious problem in Africa. We have a serious problem in the world. Now, the second bet, we had four of our mixture African traditional medicine approved. I would like to thank the Cameroonian government for that. Now, I would like to say something. For our traditional medicine to be approved, we have to make studies for that. And you have to do toxicity studies, which is very good. It's the same for traditional medicine and for conventional medicine, because when giving someone medicine, you need to make sure it's not toxic and it's safe. We did that. Now, they ask us to make to go through clinical trials. That costs billions. Why? Because protocols were important. They were not contextualized. In Western medicine, you have one active ingredient or two. In a plant, you can have 50, 20, 100 active ingredients. How do you do pharmacokinetic studies with following 50 active ingredients? How much will that cost for a poor traditional healer? So we either need to provide equipment to universities, to all African science laboratories, provide equipment, provide basic consumable so that they can do the research. Then they required for a traditional healer to buy insurance that costs millions. How will they approach that? So everything is set for traditional medicine not to be developed in Africa. Africans, decision makers, are killing traditional medicine. They're killing the pharmaceutical local industry. Do they know? I don't know. Let me tell you something else. In national regulatory agencies or authorities, for a medicine to be approved, you have to go through a commission. And that commission, you have commissioners. Most of them don't know anything about pharmaceutical industry, about developing medicine or endogenous medicine, and they hate traditional medicine. And those people are in charge of approving traditional medicine. That's a problem. We need to have enabling environment. We need to have enabling commissions with physicians, pharmacists, researchers, traditional healers, anthropologists, so we can think out of the box, so they will know how to develop medicine and they know how not to be partial. So they let science speak instead of letting emotions speak, because everything happens as if we've all been brainwashed to say that what's coming from abroad is what's good for us. But we see people dying abroad because they didn't use a comprehensive approach. We should use a comprehensive approach. Vaccines can be useful for people with several comorbidities, for people at risk of developing severe COVID-19. But for people, strong young people, why in the world would you want to vaccinate them? They don't have any risk of developing COVID-19. And I believe, my humble person believes, it's actually vaccinated people that would spread the disease because they're not careful anymore. And vaccination doesn't stop contamination. It decreases hospitalization and it decreases death for people at risk of developing severe COVID-19. So the world needs to set priorities. Africa needs to set priorities. It's very important for us. Now, I'll move to the next question. You asked me how can research be amplified to, I don't know exactly, how research can be amplified to develop our industrial local industries. I think I started talking about that. First of all, I think Professor Raoul talked about Pfizer. Do you know why Pfizer is strong? Because they invest in research. They have state-of-the-lab laboratories. They hire the strongest researchers of the world. They even know our forests more than we do. For us, we invest a lot in meetings, in making treaties, in big, I don't know how to call it, those big get-togethers, but we don't invest into building scientific laboratories at universities. Is the first priority. We have pharmaceutical department. Pharmaceutical department, they need to be able to manufacture local endogenous solutions. If given state-of-the-art equipment, consumable, reagents, and also we need to start manufacturing our own equipment in Africa. But to do that, we have polytechnical schools. When we buy equipment, why don't we do like Chinese people? We buy multiple equipment, we dismantle them, and we teach children how to manufacture equipment in Africa, how to manufacture reagent in Africa, because we have chemistry department. What happens is that when I'm at a university, I'm looking at thesis. Most medical doctors have their thesis on plants. Most pharmacists have their thesis on plants. But once they get the degree, research findings are put in cupboards. That's outraging. There is no mechanism that translates research finding to economic development, to economic products. And why at the university, when don't we install patenting offices? When I was in the US, our findings were being turned into patents, and patents were bought or valorized by the private sectors to manufacture products that are sold everywhere in the world, including Africa. And when I was a student in Washington State University, they made us write research proposal and taught us how to look for money to do research. And we had to defend those research proposals. I didn't see that being done in Africa. We need to teach children how to look for money for research. And also we have private companies. They pollute Africa. They create diseases. Why don't we create a way for them to finance research? Because when we always say pharmaceutical industry will do this and that, but what have we done ourselves? How much do we fund the research? I think I'm going to stop there, and I hope I answered your questions. And thank you for giving me the floor.
I really appreciate your presentations, passionate about what you're doing. And now I give a microphone to the discussant, which is Martial Zeilberlinger. Martial, you have a microphone.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much, Mrs. Peyou Ndi. We learned so much from your presentation, and I quite appreciated the decolonial issues that you raised in this question. You raised some sociological obstacles in developing traditional medicines. You talked about political issues also, and somehow the backstage of that, which can be the global economy of the global health economy, which is made of pharmaceutical firms, etc., which gave us an articulation of many dimensions of the production of health somehow. So we had the technical aspect, the political, somehow the law, the legislation, and also the social and the global context. My first question will be about close to what you say. We know that roughly 80% of Africans don't have access to what is called conventional medicine, conventional health system, and they go to traditional healers. So at first, would you say, and would you imagine that a kind of traditional or indigenous health system could be the mainstream? Because in fact, if 80% of people access to traditional medicine and not the modern one or conventional one, somehow, if we think out of the box, we should say that the mainstream is not the allopathic health system or medicine. It's more, it should be more the traditional health system. Well, for that point, that will raise other ones, two other questions. What could be your appreciation? What is your appreciation?
Okay, thank you for that question. It's a very important question. I think 80% of the African population uses traditional medicine. I think it's even more than that. Why? Because it's very well accepted, because we got it from our ancestors. And it's very, people who don't have money can they will find a tree and they find the traditional healers, recognize traditional healers, very important, and they will be treated. And I think we've copied WHO said, we need the central level. They organize the health system. They say the central level, and they have the regional level, and they have the peripheral level, which is the district level. Even at the district level, many people don't go to the hospital. Why? Because they don't trust the hospital, or they don't have money to go to the hospital. They don't have money for medicine, and sometimes the medicines are out of stock. They said that they would create another level, a fourth level, where they will use traditional healers to treat the population. It's very important that the traditional medicine be organized in such a way that it will be used rationally. Because what happened with COVID-19, we had people lined up every day asking for traditional medicine that we were manufacturing. Thousands of people were being treated with traditional medicine everywhere, rich and poor people. So in Africa, ever since the years 1990, I think, ever since the 90s, let's speak that way, 1990s, till now, Africa still has the highest death rate, overall death rate, with everything WHO has been doing. We're still dying like flies. Life expectancy at birth in Cameroon is 58 years old. Can you imagine? It's a tragedy. That's why I said COVID-19 is not a priority unless that is addressed. Using our strength, developing pharmaceutical industry based mainly on the development of traditional medicine so that most people will have access to medicines. Now, I'll tell you what we did in our university. We started building an encyclopedia of our plants, listing the ethnopharmacological use, what our grandmothers were doing, and now using listing scientific proven activities that could allow every physician, even the population, to know when they look at a plant, they see that plant, what has been done by our ancestors compared to what has been proven scientifically. What are the doses? So, and if I have a problem, where should I go? So physician needs that, the population needs that. And I thought when we have the African Medicines Agency, they would like to support initiative like that. Now, I'll tell you something else. Does everybody knows the Vidal? The Vidal, in Western medicine, they have a book called Vidal, at least in the Francophone region. That's a list of medicines from pharmaceutical companies. And every physician has that book in his office. Now, I talked to my students. We started what they call MBOA drugs. What is MBOA drugs? We made a list of endogenous African medicines so that our physicians will also have something that will tell them about our drugs, our own drugs, so that if you have a physician in his office, he'll have a choice of using Western medicine or traditional medicine, because there is no argument. We can use both. We actually should use both. So it's very important for us to have a local industry on traditional medicine, and that we can also export. We do the research, the necessary research. We go to do clinical trials, toxicity studies, and then we can have medicine that we can export. Do you know that the market on traditional medicine is worth around $60 billion every year? And Africa, where you see the rainforest, doesn't share that market. That market is shared by others. And the market for Western medicine is $1,000 billion. And Africa, the share of Africa is only 1%. And between two countries, I think it's Morocco and South Africa, we don't exist. In the forest, the grandmother uses traditional medicine. In rural area, they use traditional medicine. Why don't we bring research to them and help them standardize what they're having, codify our medicine so that we can make it available everywhere, help us use it rationally, and also export so we can have money coming in Africa too. We buy and we sell. That's a win-win situation. I don't know if I answered your question well.
It's okay, Dr. Peyou. Chairman, I have two hands raised. Olivier has an experience on traditional medicines. He has his hand. Dr. Onyeboju also has his hand, and I may or might have 2 questions. So maybe Olivier first, and then Dr. Onyeboju after. And if we have time, I'll add 1 question.
Yes, okay. All right.
Okay.
Olivier, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you can hear me. Okay, so I do have a couple of comments to make and also a couple of questions. So I don't know if times will allow. But first of all, thank you very much, Mrs. Peyou, for this very kind of strong statement and also very detailed presentation and numbers. I will not be that pessimistic as you are, because I'm working in pharmaceutical industry now since more than 20 years, and I'm also African. And I know that it is not easy. I mean, it's not black and white, that the traditional medicine is the panacea, and what is coming from pharmaceutical industry are shit. So it's a mix of both. And it's not because you're doing molecular docking that you're going to end up with very nice drugs. If I just want to make an image or a digression, you can have 11 good players in a team, but do not win the game, because it's not easy. It's not because they're good players that they're going to score goals. So that's the reason why I really enjoy one of the comments that you made about trying to understand what is this medical or what you are doing in terms of developing traditional medicine, because this is the key. It is very difficult to convince someone to take a drug if you do not understand how the drug will work in the body. And to me, this is the main drawback, the main hurdle of the traditional medicine. So as long as you cannot demonstrate to the people that the cocktail of ingredients that you're administrating to the people will do the job, because you could not find all the target, then you will not succeed in convincing people. And that's the reason why you should really try to understand. And this is also what I'm doing in Africa. I'm helping people because I'm pharmacologist and also analytical chemist. I'm helping people to try to understand how the drug will behave in the body, because you do have several steps. You do have drug-drug interaction. You do have immunogenicity. All those kind of things should be studied well, because the safety is also key when you're developing a drug. You cannot only say that my drug is doing the right job, but if your drug is generating or is giving some side effect or toxicity, that is really a problem. Now, the question I have to you is, how do you invest the pharmacology or the pharmacokinetics of the drug in the body? And how do you submit your data for approval in terms of clinical trials?
Okay. I'll first ask your first answer to your first question. I'm a biochemist. I'm not a traditional healer. And I think even pharmacodynamics will use biological chemistry to understand what is going on in terms of pharmacokinetics. So what we're doing, when you have one active ingredient, you see how it's behaving in the body. You can have a spectrophotometer, and you can have other tools to detect how your drug is being degraded, how long it takes to turn over life. My difficulty that I pinpointed is not that it shouldn't be done. We're doing that. I'm a biochemist. I started even doing that in other countries. Is how do you follow 50 ingredients at once? You have a target. You'll take one ingredient, you'll follow it. You take the other one, you'll follow it. Plus, you have Professor Raoul said, you need consumables. You need a multitoph, as mass spectrometer, for example. It needs to be maintained. You need reagents to do that. What am I saying? I'm saying that we invest billions in building football arenas. We should put that money in doing what you're asking. That's my point. Do I know how to do all those steps? Yes, I do. Am I teaching them to students? Yes, I'm doing that. What is the challenge? Buying reagents, buying consumables, maintaining equipment. I've been buying equipment for 20 years out of my own pocket. The other equipment was donated by Oregon Health Sciences University and the National Insurance Fund, but I still put money out of my pocket every day to train students, African students. It's not being pessimist. I think I'm the most optimistic person you can find in my place. Why? That's why we've been able to save thousands of people. We don't decree that someone is healed. What we do, being a molecular biologist, I have PCR equipment, but the polymerase is very expensive. Can I buy it every day? No. So when we bring somebody in that the person is sick, what do? Physicians will take them. They'll do the test. My colleagues will do the PCR, or I will. And then if the test is negative and the person has symptoms, what do? We do scanners. We use the scanner to say the person is sick. And then the same as we do with chloroquine at the national level, we do it the same with the traditional medicine. Do you understand? And then we look at the patient. The patient must choose. He wants traditional medicine. There's some who does not want to talk about Western medicine. They will take traditional medicine. And we also, after treatment, you do all of that. You test them. You do laboratory exams, and now you know he's healed. We don't just choose like that, and we treated thousands of people like that. I'm not alone. I work with physicians. I work with other researchers. Now, I don't know if your second question is, yes, it was investing in pharmacodynamics. So we do all that, and we do comparative studies. Here we have thousands of people who chose traditional medicine and people who's doing what all the world is doing. I go to the pharmacy when I'm sick. I'm not saying that traditional Western medicine is bad. I'm part of medicine, Western medicine. I was trained for conventional medicine, but I saw the riches that are on the other side. And I call Africans to do what they're doing for Western medicine, to do the same with traditional medicine. The problem is that people don't even want to look at the data. They decrete it shouldn't be done. That's the problem in Africa. They said, I was like that, to tell you the truth. A few years ago, I was like everybody, calling traditional medicine no doses. We call them no doses. I was looking down at traditional medicine until I started uncovering what is being done by traditional healers, studying the biochemistry of that plant, following the pharmacodynamics in people. And I know it's just chemicals. There are also chemicals. People need to learn to come out of brainwash. At least I did. And I'm calling other Africans to do. I'm not saying, yeah.
Yeah. Will you just conclude on that point?
To conclude,
yeah,
I'm not trying to make Western medicine against conventional medicine. That would be very wrong. I'm saying that when there's havoc, we should first look everywhere to have a comprehensive approach, because that's what saved Africa. That's why Africa is so resilient. And we have proof for that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Peyou. Thank you, Olivier, for your observations. I will just make everybody somehow comfortable on one thing that makes me uncomfortable. I would like to have an answer, but I don't ask the question. I just give it to you, because all of you seems to take traditional medicine in the side of biochemistry, etc., etc. And you talk about a comprehensive, let us say, health system. I would have talked about a holistic health system in the sense that traditional healers are not only on the side of biochemistry and on the side of somehow allopathic medicine, but I'm not sure we'll have the time to develop that, because what could be interesting also is to see the difference between what is called conventional medicine and what we can call traditional medicine. But the debate has not gone that way. So maybe we'll leave it for another
Okay.
opportunity. Another thing that is, according to me, very important is the issue of the property rights, because when you have traditional knowledge is common knowledge from a group or a nation, or an ethnic nation, etc. And when Western pharmaceutical group use them, then they generally there is something they call biopiracy. You know, there's something that we can call predation of heritage. That's what we have, and we expect African researchers and like you not to behave the same way and to have solutions on that. But I see that the Dr. Onyeboju has a question. I think Ali Musaye has a question. Augustin Hall has a question and observations. So if the chairman allows me, I give the microphone to Dr. Onyeboju, and then chairman, you take again the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I want to thank my colleague that just presented for an excellent and very passionate presentation. And I understand your frustration. I have worked in regulatory authorities. I've worked at WHO. I know what you're talking about, and it's valid. But I just wanted to create some clarity. I used the term, the phrase traditional medicine 3 times in my presentation. And when I said non-therapeutic measures, I said it was in reference not to the phytochemical, not to traditional medicine, but traditional medical practice. Okay. And I was actually going to support what you were saying, and you've expanded it beautifully. Wow. African communities at the periphery, at the district level, had understood before the world did that COVID-19 was airborne, and had already started telling communities not to cluster within huts, but to be outside under trees before it became an intervention. That's what I was referring to. So that's important. The second issue for clarity, and Professor Belinga captured it, and Olivier also captured it. Africa is huge, more than 1.35 billion people. The context is peculiar depending on which geography. South Africa, right, is in Africa. And the current data for COVID in South Africa, which is enormously different from the rest of the 54 member states of Africa, is as of today, they have above 4 million cases and 102,000 deaths from COVID alone. Infrastructurally, in terms of capacity for data collection, R&D, they are ahead of the rest of Africa. But so, it would be uncomfortable for one to make a pronouncement for the entire continent. We need to look at context-specific and country-specific issues, but creating a generic oversight that enables countries to interpret the regulations. The essence of this webinar, in my view, was to begin to develop the, if you like, the vehicle for policy pronouncement, for policy implementation, for practical policy, approaches by member states in the country, in the continent itself, and that is very, very important. And I want to thank you for underlining the necessity for R&D into phytochemicals as a complement to allopathic medicine. It is critical. And I agree with you that most regulatory authorities do not have the standards or the approaches for evaluation of phytochemicals. Should we use the same basis, efficacy and safety? Should we look at other parameters? These are things that we should begin to develop within our national regulatory authorities and within the umbrella bodies like African Medicines Authority as well. So I'll stop here and thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you. Chairman, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Onyeboju. Thank you. Chairman, you have the microphone. Chairman.
Can I ask
no, to Ali this time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Peyou, thank you very much for this very, very interesting and convincing intervention. And in many occasions, you have mentioned the necessity of having a comprehensive approach in Africa, and perhaps that is what have saved and what have developed the African society's resilience. So my question is, maybe perhaps we need in the same path, we need also to go back to the epistemology of health, and also to deconstruct the conception we have of this idea of the health. Health is not only in the African cosmogony and African philosophy, is not only the absence of disease. So in Africa, we have perhaps a more holistic perspective of the health that would be the well-being of the individual. So, and the natural healer mostly take into account not only the physical well-being, but also the mental and psychological well-being. So my question is, how in developing indigenous, I don't use the indigenous medicine, but endogenous medicine. That means our traditional knowledge with the science, a new development of knowledge that has been applied to that those. So how the indigenous medicine can respond to that the redefinition of the very notion of health and well-being.
Okay, let's say, I think what we're talking about, traditional medicines has many specialties, because we have divinatory medicine, holistic medicines, and what we're doing is close to phytotherapy. So it's very important to say that. And I cannot address the holistic issue because I'm not working alone. I can't do everything. I have my specialties. And we work with anthropologists that will address, and even people collaborate with people from Cerro de Tula. So they will address all those issues. And one thing you said that's very important is when an African comes to you, we chose a name. When they say Gulbutara, for example, that means the power of the ancestors. Many people took the medicine just because of the name. They will come to me and they say that this name, I think it has mystic power. I don't know, really, I don't have the power to give mystic powers to medicines, but it increases acceptance locally. So to say no is not, to be honest, it increases acceptance. But there are people that will address the holistic issues. And also we have psychologists that will work with people. The advantage here in Cameroon is that when people were sick, some were confined locally, even at the beginning. So people were not rejected, like I saw many in Western counties. So people were still accepted even if they were sick. I will talk personally. Whenever I gave someone medicine, maybe it's not good to say that, but I never had a mask on me. So I was always exposed to COVID-19. Even someone will come to me and say, I'm sick. I'll tell you, did you get tested? It's very important to get tested. The government will test him or we will test him. And then we will treat him. You see, when looking at us, they saw that we accepted them. And I think that worked on their acceptance. I don't know what to say. But the divinatory issues, there are traditional healers here that will address that. So it's very important to work with people's representation. I think that's what I learned in public health school. If you come to Africa and say that I'll give you everything you're doing is bad, people will reject that. That's the main problem too, with people not going to the hospital, because some people, it's not in their culture. Some will refuse. We've seen people, we say, please go get tested. They still refused. And we had to treat them. We had to do prevention because we didn't want them to go around making people get sick. But we talked with them, but they said, no, they cannot go to the hospital because it's not their culture and it doesn't make them feel well. Some people told me, if you make me go to the hospital, I will die. So what was I going to say? I said, okay, what can we do? I called other people to see how we can address the issue without them forcing them to go to the hospital. So there's a holistic issue here that anthropologists, that's why it's very important that in research team, anthropologists and sociologists be included, even in the health system at the peripheral level. For us to have people treated, for them to trust us, we need to understand them, then understand their way of doing, the holistic approach that they're using. That's why also we're working with traditional healers, because there are many things that they taught us. They know trees a lot more than we do. It's just that they don't have the science, the biochemistry behind. So it's an exchange. And when we talk about integrated approach, a comprehensive approach, is to say, we have Westerners, they will come with vaccines. We study them, we accept them. African countries will accept them. Now we have traditional healers coming here with their beliefs. Why do we reject them completely? We should listen to them to uncover what they're saying and to understand their holistic approach, and we learn something from them. I think, I don't know if I understand your, I answer your question well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Chairman, and Ali, who is the director of Afrospective, it's worth saying it. I want to raise your attention on the fact that two of our members, the members of our think tank, are connected. Diran Somoni and Marlyse Peyou Ndi. Do you think we have time to give them 1 minute or 1 or 2 minutes each of them, if they want to say something to put us in the perspective of the? Okay.
Yeah, of course, yes. Move on.
You.
Yes. Okay. We just have to be cautious about using time. So if the questions are specific, that's okay. So we'll give them 2 minutes each. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move forward.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, can I speak?
Yes, you can.
Okay. No, my comment in the chat was essentially about the nomenclature that sometimes we use. It's fine because we have a sense of what we mean. But if we say that science is the birthplace of Africa, including precision-based sciences, mathematics, and so on, and the ancient Greeks studied medicine in Africa, and the modern Europeans attribute Western science to the Greeks, who themselves studied this in Africa. Is it true that Western medicine is not African? Is it true that modern medicine is not African? So I think Ali Musa talked to endogenous captures the fact that the sources of this knowledge may have come from elsewhere, but we make a decision as to what is useful to us based on what we generated autonomously and what we adopted. But I think there's a danger in alienating ourselves from what is considered to be contemporary science as non-African, as though contemporary science at all periods of time in history has not involved the contribution of Africans. I don't have the answer to this, but I just wanted to put on the table the idea that we should not divorce ourselves from contemporary science. Yeah, anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Diran. Okay. Marlyse, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
Okay.
Marlyse Peyou Ndi, are you there? She can't hear you. So, Dr. Peyou Ndi.
Okay. You want me to answer to comment on what he just said?
As you like.
So I think from what I've learned is that science was, the origin of science is Africa, it's Egypt, ancient Egypt. But the nomenclature is set by Western countries, and we have to follow that. Even I think here in Cameroon, when in Africa, they told us all the medicine we're manufacturing, we should call that improved traditional medicine. Traditional healers got mad. They say, why? We should call that African medicine. You see why? Improved traditional medicine. Does that mean that African medicine was bad before? So there are big arguments about nomenclature, and I don't think it will stop anytime soon. And also, I think when medical doctors swear, they swear, they call that Hippocrates sermon. Yes.
Yeah.
Was that guy working on Western or traditional medicine? I think at that point it was traditional medicine, right?
Yes.
Good. So it's very important for a nomenclature that it be contextualized so that there's no prejudice on it, and it's very important. But the problem is that Africa doesn't call the shots. Excuse me for what I'm saying, but I think as African, we should tell the truth. The African Union is co-financed by the European Union. I work in sub-regional organization of Central Africa, OCEAC. It was mostly financed by Europeans. So if they give money, most of the money, they call the shots. They will dictate the nomenclature. They will be everywhere. So unless African improves ownership, whatever we do, we should also finance what we're doing. Unless we do that, we'll always have problems because other people will decide for us.
Professor Hall, thank you so much, Dr. Peyou. Really, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's move to the next step. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Marlyse Peyou. It was absolutely fascinating presentations with lots of passion, just love it.